Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Spaying the Need. Tonight, we're going to talk about another podcast host and one that's doing good in our community from Hometown Heroes, and the host of that podcast is Thomas Valent. Thomas, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor.
And this actually podcast is in its early stages, which is about a year old, and you kind of started this back about a year ago. If people don't know you or know of you or your podcast, talk about your beginning and kind of how you started in this and to where you are now.
For sure. So Hometown Heroes podcast started last year during the pandemic. I was recently doing various service works and acts of charity in the community. And I didn't want that to stop. Even though I physically couldn't help someone, I still wanted to help in any way that I could. And I thought about it long and hard and talked with a bunch of people, on what I could do to try and help. And someone recommended that I start a podcast. And I started Hometown Heroes, interviewing doctors, nurses, law enforcement. To now, it's really anyone that I think or people try and help me realize that are doing good for the community and works around, the country right now. Because you can be a hometown hero even not in our hometown, but to wherever your hometown may be. So I started that to try and help people, to keep a smile on people's faces, because we were in some times where they weren't pleasant and everyone was going through hardships. And I just wanted to be that light and to help people in any way I could. For example, like doctors and nurses, we needed more of them, and helping bring them on to show people that maybe were in school to be a nurse, the great things that they were doing, and to give advice to them and just help in any way.
Well, if people don't realize, you were only 15 when you started this podcast. You're now 16. So starting off young, kind of really getting into the stages, could have an enormous career moving forward. What was some of your challenges that you kind of had to face, kind of creating this podcast and the long-term effect of it?
For sure. Starting a podcast at 15, it's not easy. 15-year-old, you don't know, too many people that are doing good things around the community. So it's, building relationships, building friendships, building connections that you have. Because that new connection will have new connections. It sprouts into things. It sprouts into people. So that's a challenge I've had, has been, finding people, getting people on, getting to have them on. It's simple to, text them, but or email them, but it's another thing to actually get them on, the show. So it's growing a base, growing a community of people that you develop relationships with, and I wanted to keep that relationship too on the podcast. You have the podcast. I want to check up and make sure you're still doing good and stuff like that. So once you come on the podcast, I don't want it to just end there. I wanted to grow that relationship, build it, and still keep in contact and see still the good works that people are doing. So at 15 years old, it's not easy starting a podcast. 16 now, but as you grow, as you get better, like I said, it's like in everything in life, repetition. You do stuff over and over again, you're going to get better at it. And that's what I've done. And I've progressed, and I hope to continue to progress as, I get the experience that I need.
What made you start the podcast? I think everyone thinks about how you got your start or how the idea came about. What does that look like with you?
Mm-hmm. For sure. So I was in a group called Game Changers, and we wanted to see what we could do to try and help in the community. And we thought. And then after that meeting, I thought that I could start a podcast to try and just help people, like I said, put a smile on their face and just help in any way I could. And then I would see signs in people's yards, like the heroes of the pandemic were the nurses and stuff like that. And I really got the idea, like, I think this is a good thing I should start. And so I just took that and I took it for Hometown Heroes podcast, and I really expanded to something I could only imagine. And I feel like it's going to keep growing. So I started it to try and help those people. And I saw the work that they were doing. I saw what they were doing to combat this virus and all the work that they did, the bravery, the dedication that they had. And so I wanted to recognize them.
And if people don't realize, you're actually from Warren, Ohio. You go to Warren JFK School, and I've known plenty of people there, and I hear some of them are your advisors. They've advised you well. Talk a little bit about how they have really affected the way you have been towards this podcast.
For sure. With anything in life, I try to take my faith into everything I do. And coming from a Catholic school, faith is important to me. It starts with Father Lavelle, who's the pastor of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Niles. He's helped me in tremendous ways. Our president, Mr. Keneally, he's like a father to me. He's helped me. Our principal, Ms. Consiglio, we have our own news called WJFK, and that's really been, an influence and something to look up to. From all our administrators to the office, Mrs. Slosher, coming into school and hearing how they love the podcast, hearing how they, how do you do it? How do you talk? It brightens my day. From all the teachers that have helped me through all the way. I'm only 16 years old, sophomore in high school. I still got a lot of learning to do. And something that I really look up to are, I look up to a lot of people. I look up to most people that are older than me. I have a tremendous respect for people like that are just older, because I love to hear their stories. I love to hear about their life. And it just helps you to grow as a person, to hear people's stories. And it's just a whole nother level of respect I have for, people in my school and in my community.
Well, we talk about some of those role models, which we'll talk about a little bit later. What has this experience been like when you interview these hometown heroes, these doctors? What have been some of the great conversations that you had that have really hit home?
For sure. So my first ever podcast, I had it with my uncle, and he talked about how hard it was for, diagnosing my father with cancer. My father had cancer before I was born, so I never really knew about it too much. And that was hard for him to say. It was a hard podcast for him to talk about that stuff. He's a cancer doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. He has a paper coming out. He's done some wonderful things because it's not easy being in that department. He loses a lot of people, and he's so strong for that, because it's hard for him to do that. So that has been, a heartwarming podcast for sure. All of them, all of the podcasts have been amazing. Just to learn, there's very different aspects to each person, each guest that comes on. Courage, bravery with the nurses and doctors for sure. The main theme with the early ones is, how do we combat the virus, and, the changes that we needed to take in order to get to where we're becoming and getting to where we want to become, with back to a sense of normalcy. And that's really what the early, ones were, and just showing the people what these brave young men and women were doing. And so each podcast is different, and each has very unique characters and stuff like that. So,
any of them jump out to you?
The bishop, how easy he was to talk to, how, he just could appeal to so many people, how he could just, no matter what I'm saying, we could connect in a way. And that was something that really stood out to me. But each guest is amazing, and it's a blessing to have them on and in our community.
Well, we look at, now we're kind of in this pandemic. You've started it. We've talked a little bit about nurses and law enforcement, and we're blessed and fortunate to have you be doing what you're doing. What has that been pandemic-wise? Like, have you gotten responses from people about your podcast? You talked a little bit about people when you first started about, hey, people would watch it, but have you got any reaction? Because a lot of people will tell their story to you outside of the podcast. Have you gotten, because right now the biggest thing with maybe high school kids is mental, the mental of their classes? Are they online? Are they in person? What's Warren JFK doing? Are they doing in person, online, hybrid? What does that look like? And what have you heard with mental capacity for high school kids? Because normally I would want to be back in school, seeing my friends, having that reaction and continuous thing. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we started 5 days in person right off the rip in August. We had the option for people that if they didn't feel safe to be online. And we've taken, our teachers, our staff, the students too, have taken great, responsibilities and actions to follow the guidelines and stuff necessary to keep us safe. Whether that's staying 6 feet and now I believe it's 3 feet, staying safe, cleaning, social distancing, wearing your mask, doing all those things. We've done a great job. Our staff, everyone has done a great job. And we had a little bit of roadblocks, here and there, maybe a quarantine there, month there out. But for the most part, it's been great, steady and following what we need to do. The mental aspect of it. I tried to focus on that too during the pandemic, like the early stage of the pandemic where maybe we've been in a lockdown situation. I started to realize how important mental health was. Listening to people, I had Andrea DiGiacomo on from Thrive Counseling in Warren, who they focus on different mental health aspects and stuff like that. Last week I had Luke Wallen on, who I'll talk about goes through a lot of stuff in his life and how hard, and being a leader, being an athlete, being a man, that stigma maybe that, we're not supposed to share our problems and that we're not supposed to talk about them. And being a leader, we're not supposed to maybe. But we realize that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to tell your problems. It's okay to talk to someone about it. There's always going to be someone there for you. And we just need to realize that. But the mental health aspect of it, like I said, I realized how important that was. How people may joke about it and how we may need to take that more seriously, and how mental health is something that we need to focus more on.
Have you heard or talked to other kids from other school districts that about mental health? Are they feeling the bind as well that you're seeing at your school, or is your school kind of still there, but it's pretty much mental health is everywhere?
Right. Mental health is everywhere. Even in a smaller school, you still see it. And I see it on social media. I see it all over. I feel like with me, I'm trying to appeal to both an older generation and our younger generation. And I think mental health encompasses all of that. Teenagers, sometimes maybe you feel like maybe you can't go to your mom, maybe you can't go to your dad, maybe you can't go to someone that because maybe you feel like they may make fun of you, they may say something. But I just want to get that message across that, like, there's always going to be someone there, and that I want that person to be me, but I say I can't be there for everyone. And so my message too is that maybe I can influence someone, rub off on someone, to try and help someone, and maybe someone else will want to help that person in return. That's kind of like my message, and my goal is to try to help those who are struggling with mental health know that there's someone that cares, and there's someone that someone is there. But yeah, I've seen mental health in my school, even it being a smaller school. I've seen it in public schools, even your friends. But it's sometimes you don't know that person is going through stuff that they're going through. And that's the hard part. And sometimes it's nature to just keep it down and hold it in. But it's good to get out and talk about it. And that's what I want people to know.
What advice, I know you talked a little bit about how, hey, there is help out there. What advice would you give additionally to those students that don't want to talk about it, that they keep it all inside? Because at that age, that's something that a lot of teenagers do and a lot of adults do nowadays. And with this pandemic, they hold it all in. So you really don't know that they are okay. What would you recommend to them?
Right. I think that a lot of people overlook, especially with teenagers. I know adults have it too, but teenagers that, you guys don't have stress. You don't have a job. Maybe you're not going through some of the stuff that maybe adults are going through. But at the same time, people do. And I think adults need to realize that too, in a way, that there are a lot of teenagers that go through a lot too, and especially adults too. It's in everyone. We all go through hard times. And like I said, I just want that message to get through, that there are people that want to hear, that want to help you. Sometimes it feels like maybe there's no one there, that no one will be there for you, but there is. And being an athlete, you're supposed to be tough, and you're supposed to be, you're not supposed to talk about that stuff. But I'm trying to help, like, break through that ice, break through that stigma that you're not supposed to, because it's okay, like I said, to not be okay. It's okay to talk to people about that, because like I said, we all go through stuff. And if everyone was there for each other, what kind of world would we live in with that? And I think that mental health it's just important. And I just want that message to get, that there are people that care. There are people that want to help, even when it feels like there's no one there.
What does the future hold with you in the podcast? What should we be looking for in the future?
Yeah, so I want to do, some big names. You always shoot for those goals. You always shoot for, the highest person you can go. But sometimes I have to tell myself, you have to come down to earth a little bit, because there are still heroes in our community, in our state, that don't get the recognition they should. And I got to find them, and I want to find them and recognize them, because that's the heroes. There's people, there's celebrities, there's people that we admire that are heroes, but maybe necessarily they get the recognition they need, and maybe they don't do some of the stuff that these people are doing that don't get the recognition. And so I want to try and get to as many people as I can doing good works. I've always wanted to start my own foundation or nonprofit, and I wanted to try and get that this year. I don't know how. I don't know, the specifics of it, but I'm still looking into that. I want to be there for my community. I want to, do things at Easter, at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, pass out food, toys, gifts, whatever I could do just to help. And I think that would be my dream, to have one of those. So.
Well, as a founder of two nonprofits, if I can be ever of a service to help you start or go that route, you let me know. I'll be happy to sit down and guide you in the right direction.
Thank you so much.
We've talked a little bit about interviews and what experiences. What would you be looking for? Like, who would be that one person or a handful of people you'd love to interview, just to kind of pick their brain and like, it's always the notion of, I'd always like to sit down with XYZ and have dinner and just pick their brain. Who would that kind of be in your regards? I know you probably have a long list, or at least have an idea, because you've been in it about a year. What's that look like?
If there's one person I really want to talk to, it would be Stipe Miocic. And he's a fighter, but a lot of people don't know he's a firefighter too. And balancing that out, and he's from Cleveland too, balancing that out, how's that been? I would just like to talk to him. There's a handful of people that I would love to talk to. There's a list that I could talk about. I'd have to think about some off the top of my head. But
it's interesting, because we switched the thing. You're now in the hot seat, as we like to call it, and not the interviewer.
Right. Because there's so many people I want to interview, but I can't, it's hard to think on the spot like that. But I would just want to interview people that try and make a difference in the community, whatever that is. People around Ohio, and I want to like I said, I want to expand a little bit too. Whether that's whatever that person's hometown is, that's what I would want to do too. Not just in our hometown, but yeah. So that's where I want to, take that direction.
What do you take from all this? What do you learn at the end of the day?
I learned that I'm blessed to have these people in my community, and I get a sense of blessing for who we have around us, because I feel like in our world, a lot of light is shed on the bad things that happen in our community and in our world. And I want to bring light to the good things that are happening, the good people that are doing wonderful things for this community and giving back to the community and doing all the good things instead of what's being actually portrayed.
What have you learned from your experience?
I've got a sense of blessing and understanding for what these people are doing in our community. What good, what awareness, what charity and service they bring to the community when most of the news and stuff is being portrayed as bad, when most of the bad things are seen, most of the things that we don't want to see are on the news instead of the good that people are doing. And I want to bring light to that. I want to bring light to all the people that are going into their community and making it better and making it what it is. And so I've learned a sense of blessing and great appreciation for these people that are giving back to this community.
What advice can you give someone that would like to start a podcast, or kind of giving them a little heads up? Because since we all learned from our first year of podcasts.
Shoot for the stars. And if you don't land on the stars, maybe you'll land on the moon. You know, as you said, you can't just get caught up in maybe a no. You can't get caught up in, one person that may not do it. You just got to keep moving on. Don't be afraid to, shoot that big text or that big interview, that email to someone. I tell you a quick story real quick. When I emailed the bishop, my parents were actually said, that's not going to happen. That's insane. This is not going to happen. And then I got it. And, it's just people are going to doubt you in your life. And being a 15-year-old starting a podcast, that's not normal. So people were hesitant about it. People, maybe didn't like it. And like I said, I try to please everyone, but I learned that the hard way that it's almost impossible to do that. But, just whatever you want to do, you got to do it. At 15 years old, starting a podcast, it's hard. I said you have to grow. I didn't know a lot of people, so I'm trying to grow as a person, grow with connections and relationships with people, and try to get bigger, try to get more people because I don't know everyone in the community. So it takes time. And from the first podcast to, where I'm at today, like I said, repetition, and it will get better. So just don't be afraid and just do what you want to do. And I think podcasts are a great experience and a great journey. So that's what I say.
I appreciate that. So if someone wants to find your podcast, where can we find you?
You can find me in Hometown Heroes Podcast on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Anchor. Those are the three I'm on right now. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Thomas, thank you for joining me tonight. This was good. I'm got to know you, and I wish you the very best for the future.
Thank you.
Now, at the end of my show, I like to do some questions at the end. If you're up for a little bit of fun.
Oh, I'm up.
Okay, I bet you are this time. Best accomplishment.
Like I said, playing in a state championship game was an accomplishment. Maybe not winning it, that would have been a greater accomplishment, but getting to that point, and playing as a sophomore, starting on special teams, that was an accomplishment. I one of my best accomplishments, something I always looked up to, always looked forward to. And now I'm trying to start on varsity as a safety. So hopefully I can achieve that.
Okay. Best memory.
The memories I have in high school right now, I'm only a sophomore, but the memories I've had growing up as a little kid, being a ball boy, seeing all those who have came before me, those memories will never leave me. I have a great respect for those people. And my family growing up in Kennedy, I have a great love for my school, and those memories will never fade.
Okay. What's your best experience?
This podcast experience, it's been a journey of helping people and seeing the good and the light that people do. It's an experience that I want to continue to have and hopefully it keeps growing.
Okay. Who would be your role model?
A role model that I have and I really study a lot is John F. Kennedy. And while he may have done some bad things, I think that what he did as president the way that people looked at him, it's something that I admire and I look up to.
Okay. And the last question, if there was one person you'd want to meet, past or present, who would it be and why?
Jesus. I'd want to meet Jesus because I'd want to tell him thank you. I mean, he died so that we could be here. Without Jesus, we wouldn't be here. So I hope to see him one day. So that's.
Well, Thomas, I appreciate you taking time. I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope you enjoyed being on the show.
Thank you. It was an honor being on here.
Appreciate it. If you guys want to see his podcast, you can go to Hometown Heroes on Facebook, YouTube, and Anchor, and they'll all be there. If you want to see any more interviews or announcements from the Spanning the Need podcast, please go to anthonyvspano.com. Everyone, stay safe. God bless. Have a